Good evening, good evening, good evening. Once again, Happy New Year, Happy New Year. Hope everyone is well. And no matter what you're going through, persevere and stick with it. And with that, I want to thank you for tuning in again, giving me your time and attention, because that's two things that you cannot get back. So I greatly appreciate that. So this video was very much pop-up video. First, I want to say much positive love and energy to Damar Hamlin, Bill Safety, who just collapsed on the field. That's what this video is about. So I'm going to do my best to be real sensitive on this topic. So that's why first I want to just say much positive upliftment to Damar Hamlin. And with that, I do want to talk about this. And this video is about why have athletes just been randomly collapsing in the past 30 years across various sports, okay? This isn't an anomaly. This is a trend that has been happening for decades. And it's not something that you hear in the mainstream media. You might have got a glimpse of it in some major outlets, a few examples here and there, probably soccer players, but this is something that has been happening across multiple sports since the 90s. So this video, I want to kind of cover two reasons why I believe, based on some of the research and homework that I've done, that this is happening. Why are athletes, especially young athletes, I mean, athletes are relatively young anyway. When they start to get older, they retire. And the retirement age is like, what, in the 30s and early 40s? So why are these people collapsing and in most cases dying? So that's what we're going to go over. We're going to go over two causes that are not spoken about, but there's a lot of research and evidence to back these two causes, and it's not something that the media wants to talk about. So I'm going to go right into it. The first cause is what's called electrical pollution. Okay, now if you notice, or if you haven't noticed, take time out to reflect on this. Ever since we had the introduction of radio frequencies and radio waves and the telegram, you're starting to see, ever since then, increases in things like heart attacks, diabetes, and particular cancers and things of that nature. So what I did was I looked at the top 10 causes of death from 1850 until present day. And the top 10 causes of death, starting from 1850, certain things I can't mention because the YouTube censorship and the social media censorship on certain subjects is crazy. So I'm going to have to speak in a certain way. So whenever I say the thing that cannot be mentioned, it's going to refer to this or this. Okay? But before we get to those things, I want to get to the number one thing. And it's going to be dealing with this book right here. I'm going to do a book review on this because this is a powerful book. But I suggest everyone get it. Okay? It's called The Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity and Life by Arthur Furstenberg. Now, I'm pushing the limits talking about this on YouTube because YouTube only wants you to talk about fluff stuff. However, that's just not my thing. So with that, I want to read some things from this book to kind of show that this, I don't know the causes of the Damar Hamlin thing. I just want to say that. I'm doing this video to shed light on a trend that has been happening that more people should know about. And I think when we watch sports and we see these things happen, the very few times you see it on major outlets, it's something that we need to kind of go around what we're taught and see, and actually, if you feel like it, do your own homework on it. So I'm going to read from here. This is a great book. I mean, the amount of sources in this book is insane. But I'm going to just read something. Now, this goes back to the 90s, okay? And I'm going to get why the 90s was so pivotal. The 90s is probably one of the most pivotal decades in the history of planet Earth for a lot of reasons. This is one of them, but I'm going to read this. So this is from the chapter of the book called The Irritable Heart. And it says, on the first day of autumn, 1998, Florence Griffith Joyner, former Olympic track gold medalist, died in her sleep in the age of 38 when her heart stopped beating. That same fall, Canadian ice hockey player Stephane Morin, aged 29, died of sudden heart failure during a hockey game in Germany, leaving behind a wife and newborn son. Chaz Silver, who had played on the Swiss national ice hockey team, also aged 29, died of a heart attack. Former Tampa Bay Buccaneers nose tackle Dave Logan collapsed and died from the same cause. He was 42. None of these athletes had any history of heart disease. I'm going to read that again. None of these athletes had any history of heart disease. And I just mentioned at least 3 different sports. I mentioned hockey, I mentioned football, and I mentioned track. So track, there's no physical contact. So anybody talking about, oh, it's football, they got hit hard. These examples I'm giving you, like this one with Florence Griffith Joyner, there is no hit hard. And she had no heart condition. And these are athletes, mind you. These aren't just people that are out of shape. These people are in arguably the best physical specimen and prototype for being in shape that you could imagine is the athlete. A decade later, responding to mounting alarm among the sports community, the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation created a national registry of sudden deaths in athletes. So it was so many people dying and collapsing, right, from heart attacks that they had to create a registry of sudden deaths. Okay? Now we talking about 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. After combing through public records, news reports, hospital archives, and autopsy records, the foundation identified 1,049 American athletes in 38 competitive sports who had suffered sudden cardiac arrest between 1980 and 2006. Let me read that again. After combing through public records, news reports, hospital archives, and autopsy records, the foundation identified 1,049 American athletes in 38 competitive sports who had suffered sudden cardiac arrest between 1980 and 2006. The data confirmed what the sports community already knew. In 1980, heart attacks in young athletes were rare. Only 9 cases occurred in the United States. The number rose gradually but steadily, increasing about 10% per year until 1996, when the number of cases of fatal cardiac arrest among athletes suddenly doubled. So in 1980, it was rare, but in 1996, it doubled. So what changed between 1980 and 1996? We're going to address that. There were 64 that year and 66 the following year. In the last year of the study, 76 competitive athletes died when their hearts gave out, most of them under 18 years of age. The American medical community was at a loss to explain it, but in Europe, some physicians thought they knew the answer not only to the question of why so many young athletes' hearts could no longer stand the strain of exertion, but to the more general question of why so many young people were succumbing to diseases from which only old people used to die. Now, I need everyone watching this to just walk with me. We're going to take it easy. I know I'm reading from a book and that kind of makes people drowsy, but it's important to lay it down with evidence when you're talking about these things, because when you see an incident like this, when an athlete collapses on live television, right, in such a young age, questions have to be answered, especially if you find out that this isn't an anomaly. This is a growing trend that's been happening since the 90s. I think it only makes sense that I take this approach. So just bear with me on this. On October 9th, 2002, an association of German doctors specializing in environmental medicine began circulating a document calling for a moratorium on antennas and towers used for mobile phone communications. Electromagnetic radiation, they said, was causing a drastic rise in both acute and chronic diseases, prominent among which were extreme fluctuations in blood pressure, heart rhythm disorders, and heart attacks and strokes among an increasingly younger population. 3,000 physicians signed the document, named the Freiburger appeal that the German city in which it was drafted. Okay? Their analysis, if correct, could explain the sudden doubling of heart attacks among American athletes in 1996. That was the year digital cell phones first went on sale in the United States, and the year cell phone companies began building tens of thousands of cell towers to make them work. Let me read that again. 3,000 physicians signed this document. So there's a document that physicians signed, all right, when they were investigating why this was happening. Okay, it says an association of German doctors specializing in environmental medicine began circulating a document calling for moratorium on antennas and towers used for mobile phone communications. So this is called the Freiburger Appeal. Look it up. The Freiburger Appeal after the German city in which it was drafted. Their analysis, if correct, could explain the sudden doubling of heart attacks among American athletes in 1996. That was the year digital cell phones first went on sale in the United States, and the year cell phone companies began building tens of thousands of cell towers to make them work. So, what am I saying here? Well, it's clear as day. The amount of heart attacks that you've seen from these athletes and from people in general started to increase in 1996, right? In 1980, it was rare. So the change that happened was the introduction of the cell phone and mass consumption and these digital cell phone towers, all right? That's what I mean by electrical pollution. Every single time that they have an increase in technology, right, you start to see, I can't say the word, but you start to see a whole new, and you start to see people getting sick. Oh, I never had this kind of sickness before. It wasn't this strong. Sound familiar, right? Do we have new technology right now? Now, I can't say too much because the censorship machine is out of control. However, I think even common sense right here, you don't even have to see where I'm going with this. So I'm going to stop with that. So what am I saying, right? I'm saying for the longest, this has been happening. So this thing with Damar Hamlin is not something that it's not new, right? It's not rare, it's not random. Now, it seems random because this has never happened. Now, to my knowledge, in tonight's game, they suspended the football game. How many times in the NFL do they suspend an NFL game? Now, I'm about to go off the deep end and then come back in the semi-deep end. We know that a lot of events that we see in the media is staged, okay? I'm not saying this one is. However, there's a lot of Buffalo symbolism in the media, right? We had the Buffalo shooting not too long ago. We had all of these people die in this Buffalo snowstorm, and now we got this Buffalo Bills player. Now, I know that anytime you see a repetitive circulation of geography, then there's always a theme and a message that has to be told. You can see a prime example of that with Houston, okay? Houston has been used a lot in a lot of symbolism, whether it's Hurricane Harvey, during the Me Too movement with Harvey Weinstein. I mean, there's a whole bunch of places with that. So I just want that to be seen, but I'm not going to get too much into that. So I just wanted to say that a lot of these athletes, and has been said by a lot of doctors, that a collapse has been happening because of electrical pollution. So if you was to trace when 1G came out, 2G came out, 3G came out, 4G came out, when the telegram came out, when radio frequencies was introduced, if you go back in time, right, and if you look at when all of these technologies was introduced, and I got all type of science in here, because there's a lot of people that they think this sounds like what's called, screw it. These conspiracies are real, but this is documented. You know, when you deal with documentation and facts, the bibliography in this is crazy. You're talking about 50 pages of documentation and sources and references and journals. Look, all of this is the bibliography. The bibliography goes from page 413 to page 550. I got tired reading so many science journals from this book. So what I'm saying is when you're looking at this, especially now, because we have a new technology, right? 5G. I won't get into that because unfortunately you can't say that on these platforms. I just need people to understand and start doing their diligence on, were there towers that's being built in the last 3 years? Do we have upgrades in technology within the last 3 years when this lockdowns happen, right? So there's no different. So that's an example that in 1996 you had this increase in heart attacks, and that's when cell phones was introduced. So when you're looking at what happened tonight with Damar Hamlin, I just want to put that into context. I'm not saying that that's the cause, but I'm saying that that's something that we need to look at. Now, that's the first factor that is a major driver to these random collapses that you see in athletes. Now, what's the second one? Now, I can't say the word because I'm on YouTube, so I have to really dance Muhammad Ali style with this and float around it. Now, when you're dealing with this, there's been a lot of weird things that's been coming up. Now, because of the way everything is structured, ever since the 80s, I believe it was Reagan, when they came out with this vaccine registry, it's made it very difficult for something to be linked to a cause to be attributed to that when it comes to causes of death. There was lawsuits, there's all types of legalities with that, so it's almost impossible for it to be acknowledged on a nationwide scale, on a worldwide scale, that certain causes of death are from, okay? For that reason, you won't see in the mainstream media, and you won't see pretty much at all, that the cause of death or collapse or some kind of injury is from that. It's going to be blood clots. It's going to be these fancy conditions that you could barely pronounce. All right? And for that reason, it never links back to that. And since it never links back to that, it never gets solved because there's a push for everyone to have the... Now, if you was to do your homework, oh, and I recommend this book, by the way. This is a great book, okay? Talk about sources and bibliography and history, right? Because people love to call everything a conspiracy, but when you put the evidence to them, they can't say anything. Anytime you have an increase of those, which also came in the 90s, if you look in the 90s, there was an increase of that, jabby jabs. And ever since that increase throughout time, you've also seen an increase of certain things. Allergies. You've seen an increase in not just allergies, but you've seen an increase. I can't say, it's difficult. I can't say too much. But a lot of conditions that you see now, right? Some, autism. There's been a lot of conditions that you didn't see. So that goes back to what I was saying about 1850. Do your homework. If you look at the top 10 causes of death from 1850 up until now, you'll see that nowhere in the top 10 was there any of these. What you did see was things that's based on sanitary conditions, right? But you didn't see that. That didn't come about until something called germ theory. Now, if you look up germ theory versus terrain theory, you'll see what I'm saying, all right? Germ theory came out in the late 1800s, around the 1880s. And right around that time, a little bit after, you had the telegram and then you have radio frequencies. So with the culmination of germ theory, radio frequencies, and the telegram, that's when the top 10 causes of death started to shift. And then you started to see more diabetes. You started to see more heart attacks, right? You started to see more pneumonia and influenza, things that was virtually non-existent prior to the 1880s with germ theory and prior to the telegram, prior to radio frequencies. As we increase technology, as we increase this, you started to now see more of this, which over time started to get more of this, which is Damar Hamlin collapses on field. So go in history and you start to see how all of these things play off each other. That prior to these things in humanity, it did not exist. Now, I challenge anybody to go before germ theory, before the telegram, to show me cases of diabetes, to show me cases of heart attacks, to show me cancer, to show me these influenzas, right? Most of the things that was caused people to get sick was sanitary conditions. And throughout the country, from America to England, it was poor sanitary conditions. Sanitary conditions were so poor that the drinking water had animal feces in it. That's how bad it was. And we're talking about up to the 1800s. That's still fairly recent. In America and in London. And when you read the newspaper articles in the 1800s from Chicago, from New York, from Boston, from London, it was filthy. Children playing in the streets and all of this filth, right? Once they improved sanitary conditions, once they improved plumbing, once they improved the infrastructure in these major cities, you started to see people become more healthier because they had clean drinking water, right? So once that happened, there was a shift, and then germ theory came out in the late 1800s, and then the telegram and this technology started to come about. Then you started to see a whole bunch of things like now. Fast forward, when you add bad diets, fast food, no access to drinking water, people not exercising, you have an increase in obesity, you have an increase in all of these things that I just mentioned. And not only that, with the electrical pollution, right? If you get this book on the chapter with diabetes, it shows how increase in technology, right? Anytime they increase the technology starts to affect your cells, and it starts to affect your metabolism to the point to where you can't metabolize foods, and it makes the foods harder to break down. And when the foods become harder to break down and your metabolism slows because it's being electrically clogged, you have an increase in obesity, right? So when you see this wave of obesity, this wave of diabetes, a lot of that's attributed to a lower metabolism, which is linked to the change in your cells and this electrical pollution. So when we're looking at this thing tonight with Damar Hamlin, I suggest people really start to do their homework, because with the push during the last 3 years to get these, multiple of those, and with this happening for like 30 years, this is just the beginning. And it's going to get to the point where you can't even hide it anymore. It's going to be commonplace. All right? Because people weren't collapsing in the street because they told us this was real. But now you're going to start seeing people collapse on the street because this is real. Like you've seen tonight in this football game with Damar Hamlin. So I just wanted to make that video for people to look up electrical pollution, ponder what I'm saying, and start to put things in context. Pull up that registry, see those German doctors, and you can see that these are medical professionals that have been saying this for the longest. And then trace everything from the Spanish flu, everything from smallpox and polio, track the time frame, and then see what technology came out around that time, and you're going to start to see the same thing that we've seen in the last 3 years. Okay? And that's where your come from. Take away the things that I just mentioned, and there's only internal processes, because the interaction that you have with the atmosphere is one that you was meant to have with the atmosphere. And anything that wasn't conducive to your body naturally has the process for it to manage. And it only can't manage it if you're taking in foods, if you're taking in substances, and if you're highly stressed where your thymus gland is small and it shrinks and it breaks down your immune system, where you're not able to fight off anything and you're not even able to have natural processes, that causes what you know is sickness and disease. Not no outside boogeyman. Okay? So, much love and positive thoughts to Damar Hamlin. We hope the brother gets well. I hope this was food for thought. This was a pop-up video, but I was moved to do it. I had to really dance around this subject because the censorship is George Orwell's Orwellian right now, dystopian, as they say. So with that, much love and success, much prosperity. Keep learning, keep building, and I wish everyone fire, uplifting 2023. Peace.